Rocks and Max. Like and subscribe. Figured I'd give you a little update on the MC project. Today is a rain day. Just working on getting, I got my stainless line to run from the compressor to the air dryer. I got the air dryer bracket made and mounted. I had to take off this piece off the compressor. I feel this is an old style. You run the nipple through there, or the plastic Airline with the bushing and ferrule, older style. So I went outside to a parts engine that I had, and I got this. This will bolt directly to the compressor with pipe thread. I'll have you guys look at this though. As I was pulling this off, really, somebody really ran this the way that this is. Strip the threads, cross thread them. Somehow it's sealed. I don't even know how, but I've seen worse. I just find it funny. So today we're just going to carry on, fasten stuff together. No big deal. Still waiting on a yoke seal. That should be here probably tomorrow. And then I'm going to mount up the carrier bearing bracket that I made. Watch it in the other video if you're not caught up to speed. And that's basically what's going to be happening today. So in defense to the guy that did this, this is brass, and it was on a Mack DM where the motor came from. So I'm curious to see what this inner looks like, so I'm going to take that apart. Can't believe it would seal, but it must have. But the guy should have known that the struggle that he would have had to tighten that up. He should have known right from the get-go that there was a problem. It's too bad this hose has a rub in it. I would have definitely reused that hose. It's a nice heavy wire hose, but it's got a rub in it right there, so that's in the garbage. But this is junk. This cannot be reused. Obviously you could possibly try to force it, and if you absolutely had to in a pinch, if you didn't have anything but this fitting. But this is junk. It's junk. That's gone right here. Threads are coming off. But it did seal. Congrats to the guy that did that. So this piece, I need this piece, the adapter, to go from pipe thread for my particular job with the stainless line. I choose that stainless line because it can take the heat well, and we've had some pretty good success for them as opposed to making up a hydraulic hose. But I don't need this piece. So gotta be a little bit careful, but I'm not super worried about it because this is a good chunk of steel. So you just set it up in the vise, but you know it's going to want to turn that way, so clock it that way in favor. When you start to loosen, it won't want to chuck on you in the vise. Well, that was awkward. As you can see, this was moving around, but I didn't want to make it super tight in the vise in case I made a liar out of myself and broke that piece. But got this piece out. I'll just put that in my stock of used fittings. I actually have to go to my used fittings to get a 90 degree for this. So I had a plug that I need to put into stock. Then I have the 1/2 inch 45, put that in its designated drawer, and on with trying to figure out what I have. What I actually need is I need a 90-degree coming out of the compressor, but I also need, it would have been nice to be able to have this fitting because I need this fitting. So basically this is what I need here. I might have it in a flare 90 to not have to use 2 fittings, but I doubt it. But I will look. You never know what you find in your stuff. Oh, there it is right there. All right, everyone. I had a few minutes to think it over, and I have decided. I cleaned up this end. Luckily, the gasket is still intact on the compressor side because that would be kind of fun to clean up. But I'm going to use this base, and then I decided to go with the brass 90-degree as opposed to the steel or the cast 90 with the steel adapter to go to my hose. The reason I did that is there really wasn't any advantage to it. It's not like I had a clearance issue, although it's pretty tight to put these pieces in. So this can handle the heat. I'm going to have this same fitting on the other side going into the air dryer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these bolts in just to start with, because once I get it in there, it's got to be facing this direction, and I can't put this bolt in after I have everything together. So I'm going to dope this piece up, and once this is screwed in, I'm actually going to put this hose on while everything's on the vise, because again, this is a tight scenario that I have to put these bolts together, and that just saves one less step of me pinching my forearms and scratching with the tips of my fingers to try to get this started, never mind fit a wrench in there. So all this work is going to be done, and then I only have to worry about these 2 bolts when I install everything completely. I like this brush on pipe dope as opposed to the regular Teflon tape. This T+2, it's got some heavies in it. I can't describe what it is. It's just not as liquidy as the paint on liquid tape is. I just feel like it seals a lot better. So that's why I use it. Put this one on. I don't have to dope this one up because it's flared. And if this was easy to get to, which I could still do this, but this is going to be my only issue, I guess. It's just going to be my only problem. But I could have done it one step at a time. This is just a little bit easier. So if you can barely see it, that's about as much as I can see. I'm going to fish it through where I think it should go. Coming through. Naturally, I'm going to want to start the easiest one first, just to get it started. And again, this is a ridiculous tight fit. I do have the cab down. I don't know if that would actually help me. Climbing over the exhaust, messing around. Can't see anything, I'm doing this blind. And the motor is tilted at an angle also, not in my favor. A lot easier when I was 10 years old working with my dad in the garage. Hey, come here, I need you. No, I'm no longer 10. Had to change the battery. Don't worry, didn't miss a thing other than me possibly starting this one bolt, which got started, luckily. So now I gotta reach my paws back in there, attempt to get the other one started. Scratching the crap out of my hands and my wrists with all the wire ties that are tied up and stuff like that. But all right, so tighten this up by hand. But you saw the struggle. Naturally, it's going to be edited fast forward times 10 to avoid 15 minutes of struggle here. So fast forward into this job, it's mainly complete. Got all the plumbing done from the tanks all the way in the frame rail. Got the valving in, got the rear valve. All I gotta do is plumb up for the maxi chambers in the back, plumb up for the airbags and the dump valve. I gotta run a line into the cab so I can dump the air. I got my handy reels of Airline that I got on eBay years ago and finally was able to put it to good use. But basically it's the fast forward version. There was no point in doing all that, but just had to follow all the marks that I made in these tanks. So finally these tanks can go outside and be gone forever because I no longer need them for a pattern or anything. And on to the next thing. Okay, had a few hours to jump back on this project. I put on the air dryer with the bracket and then finished up running the lines with sleeves going to it, the stainless steel line and then the line going across to go to the wet tank. I don't like crossing the street. That's something that I don't really care to do, so I had a decision to make on where the line was going to go. I figured it would be best up and out of the way instead of crossing the transmission and maybe grabbing these lines to make a nice straighter shot. It just makes more sense to get it up out of the way and it's on its own, minding its own business. And I was just in the middle of putting the fuel lines on to connect to the fuel tank, and then I discovered, more or less realized, that this is an MC fire truck. The fuel filter housings are at the back where the fuel tank was, so forgot about that. Had to dig that up out of my parts that I saved off this truck, and I currently sandblasted the mount and bracket for putting that on. I'll probably put it on this cross member right here, right behind the fuel tank. Nice and easy to get to between the frame and the drive shaft. Naturally not really close to the drive shaft because they don't have it like you normally see like in a DM. It's extremely difficult to get to between the motor and the frame rail, so I wanted to make this a little bit service happy, so to speak. And then what else did I do? I put in a T on the line so it feeds both tanks in case I wanted to add shop air to this tank to get the truck out of the garage quickly instead of firing it up and letting it make an overabundance of smoke in the garage. It'll just be air it up, drive it outside to let it warm up out there. And I put on a new line to send the message from the air dryer to the air governor. I'm still undecided on, you can see I put a sleeve all the way through down to the frame, so if there's any rubbing, it's not rubbing on the actual line. But this turbo is kind of close to this cross bolt that they use. I don't remember it being burnt paint, but I feel like maybe this is a touch close. I'll have to look into that. Maybe I'll lower it down a little bit once I get thinking about it. I actually can. I can grab a top transmission bolt instead of it being zip tied right here and being literally 2 inches away. I can gain another 2 inches, get it lower. That way it's out of heat, out of its way. But basically there's a lot of thinking involved to do it right, and it's taken a little bit of time to mock it up, try a couple things. But overall, it's doing good for the couple hours that I was able to spend on it. Stay tuned. I got my airlines somewhat situated. I had to run a line, actually it's this line right here, for the airbags, for the airbag leveling valve, along with the airlines going to the bags. I just have to run, which is right here, I already have it run up into the cab for a dump valve. So, and then I got the drive shaft in also with the carrier bearing bracket. So that's all ready to go. I got the fuel filter installed. This is the primary. The secondary is up underneath the engine, which is kind of ridiculous to do a maintenance on it, but that's another story. And I have it all primed up, got fuel in it. I just have some loose ends to take care of, battery cables, clutch cable bracket, and just some buttoning up quick to be able to fire this thing. But when I did use this port, the plug would not come out. It was a nice sharp square plug, so I put my square socket on there and I literally rounded it off. I couldn't believe that it would not come out, and I didn't want to heat it because I didn't want to destroy all the nice paint that I just put on there. It was just an afterthought of using that port. So I ended up having to do is, here is the thread that went into the tank, and then it actually fit on there perfectly. I screwed in a threaded nut. I think this is an 1.1/8 nut, so a 3/4 nut. And then when I turned it all the way in until I could feel it strip, I put on a nice bead of weld on there. And as I was welding it, it gets red hot, and you could hear clickety clack and all sorts of things and molecules moving when heat is put to the metal. And it didn't hurt the paint. Let it cool for a minute, spun right out with a wrench. So I got lucky on that one. I was afraid I might have to drill it out. But project's coming along good. I'm getting excited. I haven't heard this thing fire up in a while now, but getting there.